Hey everyone, welcome. Hey everyone, well. I'm trying to make a video. Welcome to another Regal Mystery Movie Review. Today's movie played on June 17th, 2024, and the movie was The BikeRiders. Based on the 1967 photography book The BikeRiders by Danny Lyon, this film captures a rebellious time in America when the culture and people were changing. After a chance encounter at a local bar, strong-willed Kathy is inextricably drawn to Benny, the newest member of a Midwestern motorcycle club. In the midst of a changing country, the Vandals, led by the enigmatic Johnny, begins to evolve, transforming from a gathering place for local outsiders into a dangerous underworld of violence, forcing Benny to choose between Kathy and his loyalty to the club.
Rated R.
Now this is a movie I didn't really have much interest in seeing. I'm not really into motorcycles or motorcycle culture. It's just not really my thing. Plus, add in the emphasis of machismo, or what would be called toxic masculinity nowadays, it just always struck me as a bunch of grunting and urinating contests.
Whoa!
I was pleased that the club and movie didn't start out that way. It began as a friendly racing club for guys who felt that they didn't really belong elsewhere. It was a real brotherhood. They weren't always on the right side of the law, but it was usually just traffic violations and misdemeanors. Jodie Comer plays Kathy, an independent woman who knows her worth, but she's still enticed by the handsome Benny and the allure of risk-taking. Jodie Comer is great in this role. The way that she recounts her story is so full of life. She's just so quick-witted and seamlessly shifts from talking with her friends and recounting her history. She does a great job of making Kathy feel real and relatable. Butler plays Benny, the new recruit to the Vandals. He's a smooth-talking, hot-tempered, handsome guy who immediately takes a liking to Kathy. Butler plays Benny kind of aloof. He's often just looking around with a smoldering look. He did finally break free from that Elvis voice that he's been stuck in since he played the king. Oh yeah. Benny, to me, is kind of one note throughout the whole movie until the very end. While being stoic might have been his character, it could have been a little more subtle and well done. I guess he's just mysterious. Tom Hardy plays Johnny, the leader and founder of the Vandals. Johnny's character is more fleshed out than Benny's. He's older, has a wife and kids, but he's still often very brutal, especially when his power is threatened. Tom Hardy gives a very Tom Hardy performance that, while it's a solid outing, it just isn't anything out of the normal range for him. It will definitely remind you of some of his other performances, especially with his signature mumbling through his lines style. Throw in some vocal fry and a cigarette hanging off his lip, and you're probably going to need some subtitles. I did notice that his voice rises up a bit when he tries to do accents that aren't natural to him. He's English, by the way. Now this is something that I do as well. For example, when I do an Australian accent, I tend to get up here in a bit of a more nasally voice. And it's not because all Australians talk with a nasal, it's just because it's what I think of a stereotypical Australian accent. It's also how I get into that character, and then I can go ahead and work it back down here so it's more of my natural range. Rounding out the supporting cast is Michael Shannon as Zipco, Mike Faist as Danny the journalist, Norman Reedus as Funny Sonny, and Boyd Holbrook as Cal. Each biker had their own personality, and it felt like they could be real. Well, almost real. The problem was that it felt like the actors were given a single sheet of paper with all their characters' traits on it and nothing else to go off of. They did their best to bring them to life, but sometimes I felt like they had nowhere to go outside of these defining characteristics. The movie begins in a laundromat, with Kathy talking to a bunch of friends while being interviewed by Danny, a journalist. Danny's making a photography book where he's interviewing club members and taking a bunch of pictures. Kathy begins by recounting her experiences with the Vandals, mainly her relationship with Benny. This triggers flashbacks and we get to see the humble beginnings of the club. I wasn't expecting this method of storytelling, but I think it works for the most part. The big issue with this storytelling method is that we, the audience, are shown private conversations between Benny and Johnny. These aren't conversations that Kathy would have known about at the time. Neither Benny or Johnny would have told her about them. This happens a few times where the situations shown would have been more based on rumors as opposed to first-person accounts. Another issue with this type of storytelling is that it can be jarring for the viewer. There were a few times in the movie, especially at the beginning, we were jumping between the past and the present very rapidly. And oftentimes when we flash back to the present, Kathy is doing something different or is in a different location than she was before the flashback. It wasn't something that I personally minded, but it was definitely something that I could see people having an issue with. I'm surprised with how much I chuckled throughout this movie. It wasn't anything knee-slappingly hilarious, but I wasn't really expecting that. Most of the humor came from gentle ribbing and jokes about club members by other club members. This really helped to cement the feelings of brotherhood and camaraderie. But also, Kathy was just plain fun to listen to. Jodie Comer really hit it out of the park with this. She just had this way of telling stories that made me laugh. Plus, she was really quick with the retorts. And with the odd, I guess Chicago accent, really added to the effect. She really held her own in every scene. The music throughout the film was very fitting and appropriate for the time period. It's mostly classic jukebox rock, you know, like rockabilly songs. Generally, most of the music was just in the background, like a small little layer to the scene. Not obtrusive, but also not that compelling. The cinematography of the movie was fine, nothing really blew me away. You got the sweeping landscapes of the American countryside, the aerial shots of the motorcycle riders, and really tight close-ups of men just staring at each other real tense. Basically what you would expect from this type of movie. Very straightforward, which again, is fine. It just wasn't very interesting. The whole movie kind of had this cool color and muted filter. This is typically done in period pieces that make the viewer feel like they're watching something from the past. Think of World War II movies and how they always seem darker and more muted. The problem is that just because something was in the past doesn't mean there wasn't any color. I mean, it took place in the 60s and 70s. To me, it just makes the movie look kind of dreary, even in direct sunlight. There was one scene of Kathy in a red dress, and throughout this scene, the colors just seemed kind of off. There was this odd patina to a lot of the scene, I guess to show contrast between the red dress and everything else. And the red of the dress just felt artificially enhanced. The stark contrast of this added patina and the overly red dress just looked really off to me. And finally, the story. Again, it wasn't anything outstanding. I wasn't particularly enthralled, but it also didn't drive me away. It kind of felt like I was just watching a movie that a friend picked out, and I was just along for the ride. It was more lighthearted in the beginning. The Vandal Club was a social club for outsiders to ride and hang out. They had races in the mud, picnics, and funds to help each other out. As the movie progressed, the club kept getting bigger and bigger. They had new chapters in different counties and states, and Johnny was technically still the leader of all of it. You can see how it begins to wear on him over time. Eventually the club gets too big, and the new members are more interested in violence, power, and drugs. At this point, almost all the humor of the movie is gone, and we are left with some really sad scenes. And the ending to me just felt kind of incomplete. I would have liked a little bit more information about where some of the club members ended up. And I wasn't really sure if Kathy and Benny's ending was a happy one. Overall, I just didn't find the movie that interesting, and it's not because it's a bad movie, it just didn't rev my engines. If you're into motorcycles and period pieces, this movie might be right for you. It does have a classic feel to it. And this is why I'm giving the BikeRiders a muted 6 out of 10. It's a stock bike of a movie with not enough modifications to really get purring. So, did you see the Regal mystery movie, The BikeRiders? If so, put another dime in the comment jukebox below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to pay your gremlin dues. Let's ride!